Hi, this is Pamela Gropey Art, and today we are going to paint pears. The last video I did and tutorial was apples. Now we're going to do the pears. And this is my practice ones. And I have to admit that while I was doing it, I got very frustrated. It wasn't turning out the way I wanted, and I stopped, walked away, came back a day or two later, and I thought, you know what, they don't look too bad. So I was doing exactly what I tell you guys not to do, and that's over stress about it, because sometimes our vision in our head isn't what comes out on the paper or on the surface, and yet it's plenty good. So always remember that if you're starting to get frustrated with your design, how it's turning out. Now I'm going to go ahead and undercoat with the white. Mostly it's this one. I want this one to be my main pear. So I want it to be the brightest and to really stand out the most. So I'm going to undercoat it with white. I'll leave this one yellow except for this little portion here that has the leaf over it, because the yellow that I'm going to undercoat that one with would not be opaque enough to cover that green completely. So that is why I will paint that little section where that pear would come around there with white, and that will help to coat that and make that opaque. And it doesn't have to be perfect because you want the variations in light. You just want this one to be lighter than this one to take first billing, so to speak. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to undercoat this back pear with, I think I'll do Moon Yellow. This is a Plaid Folk Art Moon Yellow, and I guess I should go through all of my colors that I'm going to use. So while this is drying, I'll go ahead and do that. So the colors we're going to use today are Moon Yellow, Yellow Ochre, Daffodil Yellow, and maybe some lemon custard to bring it a little bit brighter. I will use Wicker White to undercoat one of the pears. At the beginning, I may or may not use Thicket and Citrus for some leaves, and I'm going to use the citrus for a little bit of highlighting on or shading on the pears. And Burnt Umber I will use for the stem, and probably with that I'll use a little bit of white to put some texture on that. And that's basically it for the pears. I will use, I gotta get them out of the water, I will use my 3/4 inch flat and my number 12 flat, probably primarily, and I may come in with my script liner. All of these are available in the 10-pack that I frequently link to, as well as in my new favorite pack, which is I'll also link to. It's got the painty flowers on it and stuff, but I really like that one too for a nice option. So anyways, these are my main brushes and the main colors I'm going to be using. Also, I probably will use some glazing medium and or water, so to do a little bit of glazing. So there are the materials. So I'm going to undercoat this pear. The other one, well, it's almost dry, with I think I'll do the Moon Yellow. It's a little bit darker than the other color. I could use Goldenrod. That's also a nice color for a pear. And remember, pears are not always yellow or golden. They sometimes are green. So you could paint green pears. So it's up to you, and I'm just going to follow the outline of my pears. You see how white that is there from that underpainting? And that will be fine. I just didn't want the green to show through there. But it shows you how lacking in opacity yellow is. Many yellows and reds just don't have that coverage in these. So I'm trying to lay it down there as thickly as possible, keeping it smooth. So I'm going to wipe out my brush. I don't have to rinse it out. I'm just going to pinch it out with the paper towel. And then I'm going to go into daffodil yellow for this pear. I want that one to be really bright underneath. That's the white. And then the daffodil yellow is a much lighter yellow than this one. So I've got plenty on my brush. I'm just going to spread it around, covering over the white. Doesn't matter if it overlaps a little more onto the green. And you can probably be more precise if you prefer, because you can be closer to your design. I'm working around the camera. I have thought about getting one of those overhead cameras, but sometimes I don't like the angles those are at. So I still haven't decided on that. So just take your time, get it all covered. And there, can you see the difference in colors? And you can actually highlight this one a little bit in spots with the lighter yellow, just for the fun of it, just because you had that yellow out. And that kind of obliterates that bright white spot there too. So you can let that dry and come back. Now I don't want to overwork it because you'll start lifting the paint. And I'm going to switch to my number 12 brush to start the highlighting and shading, or I should say the shading. Now I could, I know I'm always all over the place, but I could lay in a few highlights here with the white, because it would help it to blend in with this yellow a little bit, because the yellow is still fairly wet. So just put those highlights in there. And I think that's where the little divot is, and I want maybe some highlights there around that. And a little bit there. And the same with this one. Maybe this one will have some highlights there. Now that one's picking up the paint because it's too far gone, so I'll just leave that be. There's a point that you really can't do that without pulling up paint. So we'll give that one a rest, and we'll let this one just kind of, see, it's starting to pull it. See how it's making the little, I don't know what you call them, peaks in the paint? Almost like meringue when it stands up, when it's beaten. Okay, I'll go ahead and let that dry, then we'll come back and proceed. So this pear right here, I'm going to give a little bit more coverage with the moon yellow. I need to get some more out on my palette before I proceed. So I'm just getting a little moon yellow on my number 12 flat, and I'm just going to cover up these spots that are just a little too bare for my liking around this edge. Now this will have some shadows coming soon, which we'll do just here in a moment. Okay, now I'm going to shadow these. First of all, I'm going to go with, I think I'll go with the, I could use goldenrod, but I think the yellow ochre will give it a more dramatic shadow. I don't know if I said, well, goldenrod too. Let me see. Goldenrod's a little bit lighter than the yellow ochre. And let me show you the difference. But it will work as a shadow on here. So I'm getting some glazing medium in my brush. Let me move this over so I can give you a little bit. Glazing medium in my brush, and I dip one corner in the goldenrod. And I'm going to kind of go around the edge of this and create a shadow. And I'll see if it's dark enough. And remember, acrylics dry darker than when you lay them down. You can see there's a bit of a shadow with that. And get some more on my brush. And I got a little bit of that white showing, so I'm trying to go over that white a little bit. You can see the little bit of a shadow it's creating. around the side. And I want it to be a little bit wider, so I'm going to put a little bit more where it's going a little bit further across the brush. And that's going to help it be a little bit wider of a shadow on the pear. Now when we come back with the yellow ochre, we want narrower, so we're kind of building layers of shadow here. So you see how that just shadows around the edge. I loaded that time without adding any more glazing medium. That way it made it a little more opaque. So we'll let that dry, and I'm not even going to clean my brush. I'm going to go right into the yellow ochre, blend it out on my brush, put a little more glazing medium on the other tip, on the other corner, and I'm just going to come around this one and just glaze a shadow or shading around this pear. You don't need to be precise. If a little bit of the lighter color shows, that's fine. Now this one's a little tacky from me just putting some paint on there, so I'm being careful not to pull it up. Now I'm going to pull the shadowing around this pear, since this pear sits under that one. This pear is going to cast a shadow on this pear. So that just kind of sets it to the back. Okay. Now you notice this one kind of got pulled up when I was messing with that, so I'm going to put some more of the moon yellow right there. Kind of blend that in. Tap in some of the daffodil yellow, give it a little highlight. I'm going to rinse out my brush, and I am going to go into the yellow ochre, glazing medium on my brush, touch into the yellow ochre, blend it in, and then I will go around, bring that in just a little bit, make it look like it's curving in there. I'm not going to just drag it all the way around. I'm just going to deepen the shadow in certain areas. I go away from the camera. I'm reloading with some glazing medium and the yellow ochre. So I'm wiping out my brush. I'm going to go back into the glazing medium and the goldenrod. So I want this to come in here a little bit, but I want it to be a lighter shade. And I'm going to put my divot in right up here. I'm going to shadow that. Now if you feel like you need it to be thinner, just do it with a liner. And then I'll do the divot right here on this one. I might highlight right up here where it would be coming out of that divot. A little bit of more of a highlight there. Work in some white. Give a little spark. A little spark here. And I might want just a touch of a reddish color just to give it a spark of light. So I'm going to try just a touch. You know what, I'm going to use the apple. Just a touch of apple red. Not a lot. My brush isn't totally clean, so I got a little yellow in it. I went into the glazing medium. You can also do a little bit of water and work in just a touch of red on the one corner and just kind of bring in a hint of red right here. Now you notice I'm very lightly touching and just kind of doing sweeping motions. and it lightens as it goes out. I'll put a little touch right in the divot, deepen that color there. I haven't reloaded at all. I'm still working off that first touch of red. You can always go over it if you think it's just a bit much. And I think I'll pull in just a touch right here. Kind of makes it look like it's coming in. Just a touch. Now right under here I should have a shadow where it goes under, you know, how the shape of the pear is. And I'm going to get a little bit of the yellow ochre and just kind of bring a shadow in along here. Now all of this is optional. I'm just trying to give the pear more shape. And once it all comes together, you'll look at it and go, okay, I can see now the roundness where it goes in a direction, as far as, you know, how a pear goes like this, kind of has a wave to it. If you laid it down flat, it wouldn't just be flat. So we're trying to give it shape is what we're doing. So now I'm going in to my glazing medium, and I have some citrus green here. So I'm working some citrus green, and I'm just going to kind of give it some little color over here. You see how it's just glazing on there? It's not very stark. And I'm just going to do the same right here. I'm trying to give it some motion, like I did a backward C, just to kind of make it a little rounder. And you know, for a while it looked like just a mess. But don't worry, it all comes together, and don't overwork it. Don't overwork it or overthink it. Now I'm going to kind of bring that red, tone it down right there. And all I did was load some goldenrod on my corner and just kind of go over the red. You can still see it, but it tones it down. Doing the same with a little bit of goldenrod, a little bit of glazing medium. Wipe out my brush. I need more glazing medium on my surface, or on my palette. Now this, again, is the main pear. I want that to be the focal point. This is in the background, so I'm not going to overwork him. And I'm just going to kind of, I'm adding a little goldenrod and working out that shadow a little bit. And since he's laying down, I'm having a harder time. I could turn it just to give him the shape. So he needs a little bit of a shadow along here, kind of in a C, so it makes it, pulls it in a little bit. And then a little shadow right here underneath that white part. And I think this shadow needs to be a little bit further. I kind of brought it up, and now when you turn it, which is a good thing to do because you get another viewpoint, I think that highlight needs to be a little bit lower. And then you blend it in. I got some goldenrod on my brush. I have too much highlight there. Just kind of blend it out with a little bit of darker colors. I want the shadow along here. I'll probably have to restate that in a moment. Okay, so the green I want to put into this pear. I think I am going to maybe do a touch right up here, because this has it right here. So I'm going to just glaze in some green, give it a hint, not a lot. So I have the glazing medium, citrus green in one corner, so it's just a hint. And then maybe some right along here. It's at your discretion, so where your light's coming from. Okay, now there are our pears. If this is a little bit, I got a little water on my brush, so I'm just kind of It's basically lifting that paint a little bit. I wanted to blend it a little more. Got a little bit of the daffodil in there. You see how it's, that edge is now being smoothed out a little bit. Just blend it over so it fades into that. Okay, now I'm going to go for the burnt umber. I could tap in where I could see this hint, just speckle in some real bright highlights right there. Maybe one right up there. One right there. So that kind of worked in there. So now I will actually really go to the burnt umber. And you could use a liner for this, but I'm just going to use the chisel edge of my number 12. And I have the burnt umber in my brush, and I'm just going to pull a stem. And then this one down here, I'll pull a stem. Whoops, that one had two. I didn't stay on the chisel edge. But I'll just kind of dab it down there to seed it. I'm rinsing my brush, getting it fairly clean, and I'm going to lift this up. I dried it out, lift it. So there, I lifted my extra stem. Just a touch. And when I go away from the camera, I'm wiping it on my towel. All right, so I'm going to get a little bit of white, mix it into this burnt umber I have here. Just kind of tap in some highlights or texture, whatever you want to call it. This needs to be a little bit deeper in here. I mixed a little bit of burnt umber with the yellow ochre. What I'm creating is like the back of the divot there. I didn't really do a good job with that. So now I'm going to go back over that. Now you could do your fly specking on this, which adds a little bit more texture. And I have a toothbrush here, I could do that. Let's see, I think I want to do the yellow ochre. I don't want it to be too obvious. So I got inky paint on my toothbrush. Now make sure we're in focus. And this is a skewer, bamboo skewer. And I'm just going to use it to flick the paint. I'm trying to be careful because I don't want it everywhere. You can mask off around it, put paper or whatever to prevent it from going everywhere if you don't want it. Now that was too much there, so I will pick it up. I'm not the best fly specker, and this toothbrush I think needs to be retired. So, okay, but I got a little bit on there, and now I'll go in and clean up my mess of a big splotch. Which clean brush, dampened it. Now I just picked that up. These splattered wrong. I probably was too close. I was trying to keep it from going everywhere. And there you have your pears. You see the shadowing now, how it casts a shadow underneath. You know, I could shadow right there around the leaf to seed it a little bit further back. So I could do that. I could go and get some more of that gray, but I think I'm going to do it with the burnt umber and just kind of show you how that helps seat that leaf to the background behind the pear. And it doesn't have to be perfect straight line. You want to dibble it in there because shadows are not just perfectly straight. You can do it with this one too. Like I said, acrylics dry darker, so don't get overzealous. and think you need to darken it more. Wait till it dries and then see if you need to darken it. And there you have it, how to paint pears, quick and easy. Now, like I said, you can leave out the red. You could just use all the yellows. You could make them green pears. You can, I think there's even brown colored pears. So draw in a semi-pear shape, paint it in, and like right now this is not wowing me, but I will walk away, come back, and I'll really like it. So, as I said before, sometimes it doesn't work at first, and you walk away, come back, and you suddenly think, oh, that's not so bad, or that turned out pretty good. So quit beating yourself up, enjoy the process, and learn along the way. I hope to see you in the next video, and we'll paint these pears on my box with the other fruit. And we will get started right away. So first thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my leaves on here. I didn't do that for the apples, but I just think it'll make a pretty overall design to have the leaves on here too. And I'm using, let me see if I can get this in the camera, Thicket and Citrus Green, my two favorite greens. They're very vibrant, especially the citrus. If you want to go with a calmer color, go with something like Fresh Foliage. That will work too. And I'm just right now going to go ahead and double load. I'm going to make these some nice large leaves. I'm not doing this in scale. I just want some pretty backdrop leaves. And so we can do one right up here. And you will notice I'm going over top of this pear, but that's okay. I'm going to undercoat this leaf with some, but the pear with some white. I got that a little wide, but. And then it'll go right over, it'll set that leaf to the background. And I think I'll put one right over on this side. I'm kind of walking around the camera here if you're wondering why I'm kind of hesitating. Or I could have done this with a number 12 flat, and it just would have made the leaves a bit smaller. And these are just my scalloped leaves. You put any kind of leaves you want in there, but it just adds a little backdrop. I'm going to go ahead and use my number 12 to put some smaller leaves in. Maybe I'll actually do some leaves off this stem. And that's just my petal stroke leaf. At least that's what I call it. So there we have the leaves. Now if you wanted them more opaque, you can go back over with a second coat. And sometimes I do that, but we're not going to worry about that today. And I just might go in with a little bit of burnt umber and some floating medium. Let's see if I can find the burnt umber. No, it's medium gray. You know, the medium gray would work. What I want to do is put in a little shadow. And I will tell you right now that I'm just kind of playing around here, showing you the different things you can do with a design. Let me side loading the brush with, first I dipped it into the glazing medium, then side loaded it with the medium gray. And I'm just going to come along here and give it a little bit of shadow. I just want the shadow here. I don't want it all the way over there. The light's coming this way. So this part will be a little deeper in shadow.